All opinions you hear are our own, and they are protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. They are in no way reflect or meant to reflect the opinion of any specific agency, officer, or service member. Some opinions may be controversial. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome to Project Sapient. Welcome back to Project Sapient. Thank you for the amount of emails I get, messages, DMs, and Instagram and YouTube, and we're all over the place. So please continue to like, subscribe, and share the content with your friends, family, and whomever else you guys know. Send it up to the moon. I don't know, whatever you guys want to do. But it's been quite the summer already. It's been pretty busy. Lots of things going on with Project Sapient, lots of work that we're doing with SIG Academy up in Epping, New Hampshire, rolling out some awesome courses there. Same with the stuff that we do. It was awesome. I actually got a tour at WHOOP headquarters in Boston. It was really cool to connect with Jeff Phelps over at the government and development team there. And, they're doing a lot of great stuff for first responders, military, both active duty and veterans. So, be on the lookout for them. Go on whoop.com and check them out with all that they're doing, which awesome stuff. And speaking of awesome, got a great guest today. We've talked, offline a couple times, trying to get him scheduled in. Pretty busy guy out there. And he's the founder of Beyond the Trek. And it's a very interesting concept, almost goes right along the line with Project Sapient and stuff that we talk about at Project Sapient. And it's all about forging leaders of discipline, resiliency, trust, and, it's like just shaping the future built on strength of character and unyielding integrity. And that's something that we always harp on over at Project Sapient. And it's really cool to have the founder here to talk to you guys, to talk to me and you guys, the listeners, about what they're doing out in their neck of the woods. So who we have is Chad Ballestrazze. I think I've already messed it up, but sorry, Chad. He's a husband founder. He's obviously the founder of Beyond the Trek, and it's a leadership and human performance company built on lessons learned from 18 years in Army Special Operations, 7 deployment, and now he helps teams and individuals lead with purpose, build resilience, and perform under pressure. And like I said, it's quite the amazing things that he's doing out there with his team. And, without further ado, Chad, how you doing, bud?
Hey, how's it going, man? I'd first and foremost, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to sit here and talk to you. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it certainly has. And, we've gone back and forth, finally locked in a date to get you to, for me even to sit down and have a chat with you. And like I said, really want to spread the message that you're doing and, to the veterans and active duty military, even, law enforcement, first responders, because we're all in that sort of role of public service to others, stuff like that. So let's start with kind of your time in the military. When did you join?
So I came in the military in 2007.
Okay.
I did a delayed entry program. So for people that don't know what that is, right? I signed the paperwork before I even left. Mm-hmm. And I did that late 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I was I knew I didn't want to go to school anymore. I knew that was flat out, right? So I didn't know what the Army was like. So decided to join the Army, and like most people, I thought it was just going to be a 3-year gig and I was going to get out. And next thing I knew, I was reenlisting, and it's been a good ride, man. I'm coming up on retirement. For anybody out there that's listening, it's in the military and thinks you can't make it, I promise you can make it. It is a long time, but it's been great. It's given me tons of opportunity. It's given me growth, and I wouldn't be who I am today without it. And then also I wouldn't have formed this organization with some awesome teammates either without it. And that's just because of the experiences that I've been put in and super fortunate to have.
And what MOS did you go into?
So when I came in, I was a 19 Delta scout.
Okay.
So rest in peace to those boys, because now during the Army's reconstruction, they've pretty much cannibalized them and made them like Bradley crew members. So I switched out of that, and I went to selection in 2013, and then I left. So I left that world in 2013, coming off of an Afghanistan deployment. Was successful at selection, went to the Q course, and then was very fortunate enough to be on a team. Did 3 deployments on a team, and then decided to transition over to throw my hand in the hat to go be an officer. And, that panned out well. And then I went back to the conventional Army for a very short time, about 18 months before I came back. But that 18 months was super impactful, and it was really what drove me to build beyond the trek. And I didn't even know it was happening in the time. And that's just because of the individuals that I was surrounded by. So did some short time back in the conventional Army as an infantry officer, and came back to special operations. Had to put myself back to the Q course again, which is not wild, but definitely crazy. Because,
That's the thing, going through it twice, not just once, but twice, man.
Yeah. So it was crazy because going through it the second time, I wasn't gone that long.
Yeah.
I left in 2019 and came back in 2022. So all the guys that I had went through the Q course with the first time most of them were cadre. So it was like one big reunion. However, though, I got humbled real quick because, almost 10 years earlier, I was a young guy going through it, and you bounce back really quickly and you figure out, hey man, you're the old guy, and the younger guys really are faster. They really are stronger.
Yeah.
It was a good experience. Again, I got to meet some incredible people going back to that process again. And yeah, I'm kind of at the tail end of my career and tail end of my time in SOF. And it's been a wild ride.
That's awesome. So you mentioned, when you went conventional, and it sort of helped you forge this beyond the trek, that you're doing now. What was it that you noticed on the conventional end that really drove you to do this?
So I wouldn't so much say it was because I was in the conventional force. It was more so I was surrounded by some awesome people that saw something in me. So just a little bit like growing up. So I grew up with an alcoholic father who was allergic to alcohol. And it's almost his personality would switch left and right very quickly, and then he would never remember. But I grew up, with loving grandparents. I mean, so I got to see 2 wildly different sides. My mom's side was very big into college and, get up, go to church, do these things. And my dad's side was the complete opposite. They started having kids at 16, worked 3 jobs, worked his whole life. And he's like, you go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had this, my dad wasn't bad, right? But he had an addiction problem. So that really shaped me being young, coming up through the military of, hey, just kind of do what people want you to do. Very similar to what it was like growing up. Just do what he wants you to do. That way there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
So fast forward through my time, I get to go back to the conventional Army, and I had some phenomenal leaders that were there that saw value in me, and then they saw my experience as something that they would leverage. So those 2 going in hand, they didn't give me any red tape. They really just let me do what I wanted to do, which was super fortunate. And I really started to notice it when I was fortunate enough to go down and be in an infantry platoon and then deployed. And the commander was like, hey man, do whatever you got to do. So again, I took a lot of time and took the experience I had from SOF and just started talking to people, figuring out that for people that haven't been in the military, right? The traditional stuff.
Yeah.
People have finance problems. They got marriage problems. They got just everything. And taking the time and constantly being in the dirt, constantly, never being the guy that was hanging out in the rear. I was told a long time ago, hey, prior service NCOs are either really good officers or really bad ones.
That's very true.
Yeah. And so I like to say, and I've been told multiple times, I'm just an enlisted guy with some officer rank. So I really took the time and just talked to people consistently. And where it really hit me is they moved me into an executive officer position, which I didn't want. And the commander at the time sat down, he looked at me and said, hey man, I don't know what it is, but there's something about you that you can get a large amount of people to move in a group and get them to go. So, hey, sucks to suck. You're going in this position. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, really like no red tape, had the ability to really work with a large amount of people and got to understand people more and figure out what makes them tick. How do you get them to come together? It's a lot easier to do in the military, right? Because I can do a lot of shared hardship through physical training and things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And that's what I did. And that's really what started to really make it born. And I went back and I looked at, for the people that don't know, typically on Friday, right? They do their big closeout formation. They want to tell everybody to have a good weekend. And so they would give me an opportunity to speak every now and again. And I would write these things down that I just thought off of the cuff. And fast forward a couple of years later, right? I come back to here. I link up with a lot of guys I had served with in special operations. And man, those little notes that I had in a book started being like the principles for what I wanted to build for Beyond the Trek. And originally this organization was built largely around fitness. So it was going to be, we're going to go out and do something hard. And then we're going to talk about how do we move past it? And it is evolved. I still like to do a physical portion of it, but it has really transpired to, hey, the failures and the lessons learned that you have throughout life, the hardship, the trauma, like it doesn't need to end there. And we just had a discussion the other day that just went out today about, are you going to take those lessons learned are they going to be in a coffin? Are you basically just going to say, hey, man, this was my bed, I'm going to lie in it? Or are you going to take those experiences and use it like a classroom?
Yeah.
And beyond that trauma, what are you going to do to give back to other people and say, hey, man, hey, young kid, yeah, you're growing up with an alcoholic dad, man. Like I've been there. And let me tell you, this is what helped,
Yeah, it's funny. The one of the reasons why I started Project Sapient and podcasting and even teaching is, an old friend of mine. He was an 18 Delta, and he was in the 80s, an 18 Delta, so he was like an old school Green Beret, and really really good dude. And one day me and him were talking, and he said, "Man, he's like the experience and knowledge you have, you should really share it." And like you said, and it turned into, which he was right. It turned into, well, am I going to really take all this knowledge, everything to the grave, and never share it or talk about it or even lessons learned from it, or am I going to give back like everything that I've learned? And that's kind of where this morphed into. Again, like it's funny, just like taking notes and writing all this shit down and, putting it all together and everything. It was really, for me, similar. It was just like the building block of Project Sapient. It was like, all these lessons I've learned, and now I'm giving it back. Like, hey, just like you said, like me, I grew up, with, a couple civil wars that, my family escaped, we made it to the US, and then, growing up and, trying to find kind of an identity or however you want to call it. And, I tell people, hey, it was a tough life, but here I am, like this is the product, of resiliency, of, just pushing forward and not letting yourself or not letting, the world kind of take you over, so to speak. So that's a lot of the things behind Project Sapient is that, like you said, the shared trauma and all those other things that we, most people probably take for granted or break apart as a result, versus using it as a source of strength.
Isn't it crazy though, right? Like you grow up in those environments and you go into the line of work like you're in, right? In law enforcement, and you tend to latch onto those people that are high performers, and you think that those lessons learned that you have aren't a big deal because you're like, dude, what's the big deal, man? Like it is what it is, right? It made me who I am.
Yeah.
But that's because we constantly surround ourselves with people that we want to be like. But you're right, like the stroller mom, the other person that doesn't go into that field is super intrigued by that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It kind of made me realize that, it was like, again, I hate to like, I'm like, other than podcasting and the book and articles I've written for like Havoc and all the other shit that I do, I'm really like a very, like, I don't project, I don't talk about shit that I've done and stuff like, it's just one of those uncharacteristic of me when I actually really started to put myself out there. And I told my buddy Bobby, I'm like, dude, I just hate talking about myself in the same sense. It's like, I just hate it. And, he's like,
So,
well, it's not about talking about yourself. It's about just talking about that experience. And that's where I'm like, you know what, you're right. It is talking about the experience. I'm not, saying, hoorah, I'm in like, been through all this shit. No, it's more like, well, this is what I've been through and this is what I've done and this is what's worked for me and this is what I want to share. And like you said, a lot of people get intrigued by that. And it's just, and again, like you said, we're surrounded by high performing type individuals that I think we just take that for granted too, because not too many people are of that ilk, that high performing.
I know you're 100% right. The thing I have had to adjust to figuring it out this last year in business is exactly what you said. Not everybody is like that. And not everybody wants to be like that.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out how are you going to talk to these people. And at the same time, there's times that you think, man, maybe I'm not ready to talk to this crowd. Maybe, you start doubting yourself. But really, at the end of the day, it goes back to what you said. It's like nobody knows you better than you. But when you're around those high performers, you don't mind talking about it. It's like, it's okay. Just go out there. Hey, swing at it. And somebody will get it, right? Like somebody's going to pick up something that you have and it's definitely going to help them out. Just have the confidence,
Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing is about, like that confidence. So, there's a lot of, obviously I'm more of the old timer at work now, it's funny to see that when we look at like the seniority list and I'm on like the top 10, I'm like, oh my God, I'm old, it's like, Jesus. But, but, it's one of those, it's like a lot of, I've noticed a lot of young cops that even that are veterans, younger veterans who didn't initially grow up in that GWAT, like you and me, like we were initially heavy into that GWAT at the very beginning, and then after 2010 2012 it sort of kind of morphed into something else, but we were like one of the what we called OGs of GWAT, right, where we were like running and gunning and doing the missions. But these I see a lot of these young guys and gals that really look up to us in a way that they want to see, well, how would Iman handle this, or how would Chad do this, or how would and it's one of those things where I tell them, I said, listen, do it better than me. Like, I got myself here. Yeah, it's all well and good, but like my two of my cousins, they became cops. I had no idea. Again, it's funny how you don't realize who you influence in your life until they actually tell you. So both my cousins, I knew them when they were babies. I was like 13, 14. They were like, still infants. I was babysitting them and all that shit. And both of them, separately told me that, they went to become cops because they saw me, in this world and how I became and all the stuff I've done was SWAT and, like undercover work and blah, 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 like all this different things that they grew up around with me. And in the end, I told them, they're like, oh, we want to be like you. And I'm like, no, don't be like me, be better. I said, it's not about, like forge your own path. Like, I'm very proud that you stepped forward and raised your right hand and went into the job, but forge your own path. Like just go out there and do your very best and forge your path. Don't worry about what path I walked. Walk your own path. And that's the thing. Like I think of like Beyond the Trek, which is kind of, in my head, I was like, yeah, that's like beyond that, right? Beyond the trek, look beyond who got you wherever you are, right? Because in the end, it's your own goals. It's your own drive, personal drive that got you here. It wasn't anything I did. Sure, you may have looked up to me, but you pushed forward and did it. And I have a feeling that you probably do, tell the same thing to your, in your classes and stuff like that, where it's like, you forge your own path. It's not about copying somebody else's.
No, yeah, you're 100% right. And I made me think of this time I was in this meeting and they were talking about who was going to teach part of these academies, right? For the military at the lower ranks. And there was this guy who was sitting there, and he was a senior NCO, senior guy. And he said, hey man, that's not my job anymore. I've deployed a ton. That needs to be somebody else's thing. And again, right, that was during that time where I started like building those blocks. And I looked at him and I stopped him and I said, it goes hand in hand with what you said. Hey, everybody needs to forge their own path. But let me tell you something. The experiences that you've had don't give you a buy
Yeah.
to not give back to anybody else. Because that young Bubba right here, that young police officer that might be over there, might just want that mistake that you learned or that success that you learned. So when they're in the doorway, when they're in the breach, when they're pulling somebody over, like they can think back and go, oh damn, dude, I remember when Amon told me like, hey, he did this thing. I'm kind of try it. If things go sideways and it worked out, I'd be like, thank God I learned how to do that. He may never need it.
Yeah.
But you do everybody a disservice when you don't share. I think, and especially now with social media and internet and how fast everything is, like there is a time and place to be a quiet professional, but there's also, we are past the time of just, I'm going to hold it on and you got to figure it out. Like we're done with that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I know there's some like veteran officers out there that are still like that. They're still, and NCOs are still like that. Still like, yeah, I'm going to hold on to this and you figure it out like I had to figure it out. And I'm just like, that's not the way it should be though. It's like, it again, I think of, our ancestors or whatever, those who came before us, whether it's in the military or, first responders, law enforcement, like those who came before us and actually gave back made the profession so much better because all the lessons that they learned, mistakes, good things, bad things, all that stuff, they just put it out there and made, me a better cop, made others a better cop because they felt the need to teach, they felt the need to give that advice, and it's funny. It just reminded me, a couple of young cops came up to me one day and they were like, hey, Sarge, we got, just want to kind of go through a couple, CQB with you, like room clearing, just a couple questions here and there. And, I gave them a couple pointers, a couple things to, to think about. And I told them, I'm like, listen, I'm not telling you this is like, with room clearing, with whatever. I said, this is not the hard, fast rule. I said, this is a way. You might find a better way, over the course of your career and stuff like that. But this is, I'm just going to give you a foundational training. And then from there, we're going to, we'll build off it. And, it's interesting just for them to like, and the rapid absorption that they did. And it's interesting that, kind of like some of the AARs that come out, because I'm still training a lot of the cops. We're doing like a month-long training where I'm leading the department and training with shield tactics and room clearing and active shooter and stuff like that. And a lot of the feedback that I get is, with all the knowledge I have and the experience I have, no matter what, I'm still very like, this is a way. Like I've done it this way. This is how I tackled this problem, and I'll even ask the group like, hey, do you guys think there's a better way? Like, tell me. Like, I'm not, I'm not opposed to, here I am close to 20 years on the job, over 10 years on SWAT. I'm still the guy who still wants to learn. Right. And I think learning never ends for guys like us. Right. And I think that's like with your senior NCO, I feel, when someone says that to me, like, oh, I've kicked in enough doors, or I've done multiple deployments, or I've done this, or I've done that. It's like, to me now they're like closing the world off. Like, yeah, you know what? I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I don't need to talk to anybody. I'm like, nah, it doesn't, again, to me, it doesn't work that way. To me, because you have that experience, you're almost obligated to give it back to the younger generation that are coming up. Because I actually recently went to training with Third ID. Was it Third ID or Fourth ID out of Colorado? I think it was Fourth ID.
Fourth.
Yeah, Fourth ID. And I did recently went up, I was invited to oversee, just to kind of give a little consulting to this company that was doing some training with Fourth ID. And I got to talk to the command sergeant major. And what an awesome guy. Like a soldier, right? Like that kind of caliber of leader. I really got along with him. And a lot of these guys, no deployments under their belts at all because they're so brand new. And then you have the salty vets, right? Who, the senior leadership master sergeants, sergeant first class and above, who have actually deployed. But you can tell that learning started literally with that command sergeant major because of all the deployments he's been in. And he gives so much into that battalion, into his battalion brigade. Actually, he was a brigade sergeant. So his brigade that everybody else feeds off of. Like, I didn't meet one senior leader over there that was not willing to give the advice or information to the young privates or anything like that. And that's something like I love seeing, and I'm sure, you see it on your end too, when you get into those classes and you notice these guys that just talk about their experiences for others to learn.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. And the fact that you're continuing, you're always asking the question of, hey, is there another way? Just shows like how humble you are.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, man, there's not a right way, but there's a wrong way. And they'll be
Yeah.
like, whoa, what do you mean by that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, wrong way being, is it unethical? Is it
Yeah.
unmoral?
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's not a right way to clear a house. You go to different units, different departments, everybody's got their own flavor.
Yep.
Right? But there is a wrong way. The
Yep.
wrong way is messing up the basics, flagging your buddy, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, and I will say, I think in society overall, social media, the news, I don't believe like they do a good picture of painting,
No.
society, because there has been a shift, and at least in the military and in the law enforcement, I haven't served in law enforcement, but man, a lot of my buddies are in law enforcement. I got family in law enforcement, and not to knock the military at all, but I have a really soft spot for people that are in emergency services. And it's because, as you know, right, like, hey, we train hard, and yeah, there's a lot of micro traumas, right? There's a lot of blasts, jumps, everything you got. But at the end of the day, like, your law enforcement, your firefighters, like, they're out there every day, and there's no decompression. It's like, I was talking to a guy last night, Brad Shepard. I should connect you guys. And he hosts the No One Fights Alone podcast.
Oh, okay.
So and he talked about how he got a phone call from a firefighter the other night, and they were talking, and the firefighter showed up at a house, and he was trying to revive a 5-year-old, and he got very lost in it, and he saw his kid there.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying like that doesn't happen on the other side of the spectrum, but it's not an everyday thing.
No.
So it is so important that people across the board, regardless of the profession that you're in, I don't care. You could be in Fortune 500 companies, right? Like, we need to coach, teach, mentor, and educate people consistently, because like, life is going to continue to go. Everything that we're in, right? Law enforcement, Fortune 500 company, we have to adapt so fast now that, like, hey, if technology fails, you're going to have to go back to those basics. And it's crazy because our kids now, they're not going to know what it's like to not have a phone and not have AI and not, and so it's not fair to them when I catch myself doing it when I tell them, like, man, when I was a kid, it wasn't like this. You guys just don't get it. And I have to tell myself, like, you're right. They're not.
No, they're not going to get it.
I've never put them in an environment where they have to learn that. And that's the same thing. It goes for any organization, right?
Yeah.
Well, when I was coming up, and okay, man, but it's not like that anymore. So, however, if technology fails, those basics that you did learn that these guys aren't learning because they got the world in their hand, they're going to need to know that. So,
well, that's the thing. So it's funny. It's funny. Like you said, technology fails. So like in our cruisers, we have computers. We got all these bells and whistles and all that, all that crap in there and everything.
Oh yeah, I got that lariat in there.
Exactly. Right. And all of a sudden, the computers go down. And everybody likes text, hey, is the internet down? Is this down, that down? I'm like, yeah, man, now you got to go traditional police work. You got to actually talk to people. How about that? It's like, I laugh, like us more veteran guys, we chuckle a little because, again, the newer generation, you probably see this in the military too, the newer generation are so hooked on the technology that they've lost that art of communication where, literally I could, even if I pull somebody over and I don't even have to really punch in the computer or anything, I can already tell just by body language, the way he talks, the way he presents himself, whether he's a bad dude or a good dude. Like, I could already, decipher all those little micro kind of human characteristics, if you want to call it, on whether somebody's up to no good or not. But a lot of these younger cops or younger, getting into the profession, they're so used to technology telling them what to do, they're forgetting the most basic fundamental part of the job, which is that human interaction. So that's something that, on mine with Project Sapient, right? Sapient, right? Human, and that's the thing. It's like, bringing back what it means to be human. And, like your buddy there that spoke to the firefighter, right? And to me, like we've dealt as a comp, Jam, and you're so right. Like when I came home from Iraq, it's like, oh, it was over. Like to me, even though you had like you said, blasts, whatever else was going on in your head, and whatever PTSD is going on. But when you come back home, you're like done, right? You're like, all right, I'm home. Let me work on myself. Let me, do whatever. As a cop, I don't have time to decompress at all. And you'll go like, for example, like a couple examples top of my head, like cops would deal with. Like I work in a medium-sized city, and we're pretty busy, so I go from one critical incident to another, to another, to another, and that critical incident can be anything from a baby dying to a bad car accident to a stabbing, shooting, right? And then I'm just going from call to call to call, or as a sergeant, I'm leading, my guys out on the road. We're going call to call to call, and no time to decompress whatsoever. And now you want to add the long hours of work, right? And all this stuff. There's a lot of micro doses or major doses of trauma that keep happening over and over and over again. And that's where you get a lot of, first responders burnt out so early in their career, where, they've already had enough. Like they're elastic load, like they're done, and you could tell. And we've always learned that certain people handle trauma differently. Some people have a gallon's worth that they can handle, and others, you give them a shot glass and they're done for the day, or even for the week. So, that's something that I try to address in Project Sapient, especially with the way I do it. And I'm sure you probably do similar with Beyond the Trek. Is I do it a lot through physical fitness. Like we embrace the suck, right? It's a shared trauma, so to speak. It's a shared exhaustion where it's a team event, a team sport, where we're all just miserable. And you would know, like, from the Q course, it's a shared misery, right? Any military school you go to, like, when I went to SWAT school and on the SWAT team, like, yeah, it's a shared suck. No one enjoys getting smoked for hours on end, but because you do it together, you push each other along, and it's that shared experience that you have that really bond you closer, and I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure you see that a lot in Beyond the Trek.
Yeah. So we actually had the opportunity to go out to a Division I wrestling team out in Kentucky.
Oh, cool.
And the coach was super awesome and allowed us to do that, man. And I mean, I went out on the mat, and it's right. It's just buying your respect with people. And man, going out on the mat, I got whooped time and time again. But the shared hardship. So the next morning, right, we went out, we did something physical, and like everybody getting together, and that gets people to open up. It gets people to want to do things. And the one thing I try and talk about all the time is, how do you prepare physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually before trauma, right? During trauma and after trauma. And it's exactly what you're talking about, right? It's building teams, and it's breaking the stigma of like, hey man, throw it in the back, just get a drink after work. Like those days are dead. And
Yeah.
and I tell people, man, and those guys that sit there on that stoop and still say like, well, that's just the way it is. I'm like, you're old and you need to leave. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Just get over it. And I think because like, I'm still active duty and stuff, I haven't had a huge opportunity to get out there a ton yet, but I love seeing organizations like Project Sapient and things that are bringing people together through that.
Yeah.
And especially now, again, right, going back to social media, you have a lot of people that want to go through those hardships, right? Whether they're soft veterans, SEALs, whatever it is, like they want to do that. And I think it's so needed, especially with the emergency services, and it's, man, I have been reaching out to departments left and right with no luck so far. Or, if I do get a hook in, they don't want to pay for anything because I get it, budgets and stuff are tight. So just playing that balance, because man, giving back to those guys that just got to deal with that stuff day in and day out. And I was thinking about this the other day. So we were supposed to run a course next month, and I was going to do it in conjunction with 27th Response, and it was going to be, I was going to teach a lot of the physical, mental, emotional stuff, classroom, and then he was going to teach flat range, and we are going to kind of merge together to CQB and active shooter, and then put on 3 different field training exercises where all the scenarios are winnable. You're not going to lose, but we're inducing stress.
Yeah.
And we're going to break that stigma and be able to talk about it. And I look at it's probably 2 years ago now. I went home to go visit, and I visited a buddy who was a police officer, and I went and did a ride along. And at the night they did the shift brief, and 3 out of the 6 police officers that were there were like morbidly obese, like morbidly.
Yeah.
And the one that was just so overweight, man. I mean, like, you pick the most overweight guy that you can think of. He had a Dunlap, his belly Dunlapped as well.
Oh, Jesus.
You know, but he prided himself on having the most DUI arrests.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, hey man, you're married with kids. If it comes down to you versus them, like, it ain't you.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare for these events? And I get it, right? Like, micro traumas, things that are difficult, but how do you prepare yourself? And it's going to take a little bit of work. And maybe it is getting into certain places in the military that you have to forge that bond. And I will argue with the military, at least the Army, right? I don't know about the other ones, but when you run into organizations and they say, man, we're a really disciplined group. You know, we have people here that work out every day from 6:30 to 7:30. It's like, but do you really? Because actually it's a forcing function, because if they don't show up, right, I can do paperwork.
Yeah, exactly. Written up to
go ahead and to deal with that. So really, how do we create a disciplined, organization where people want to be there? And it's 9 times out of 10, man. 8 times out of 10, it's just shared hardship, and then it's culture.
Yeah.
Right. And I love having those discussions with people that say, well, I have a strategy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me tell you something. Culture eats strategy for breakfast every day.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I find that a lot of cops, after they graduate the academy, they just let themselves go. And here's the thing, like, it's understandable, because as a brand new cop, because I've been that brand new cop, when you go on your first critical incident and you're just overwhelmed, you're like, holy fuck. Like, for me, it was like this bad accident involving a train. Like, it was all sorts of like bad shit. And I'm like, like, I guess this is what I signed up for. But to me, like, I think with just life in general, experience with life, I just handle differently. I just handle it differently versus, guys who were never exposed. You're talking your run of the mill, normal high school, college, all that cool things that they did. And then they become cops, and all of a sudden now they're getting hit with real world type shit. And you could see them really kind of start to unwind, not unwind, like wind up, actually, so not so much unwind, but just the bad habits start to come in, the Slim Jims from the local convenience store, the McDonald's runs, like, you start to see that. And to me, those are all symptoms of trauma that's not being addressed by the agency, by the departments. And that, to me, is where, I always say, when it comes to like trauma and stuff like that, the military has law enforcement beat by 20, 30 years. Like, the police departments are behind the 8 ball so bad. That's why we have such a high suicide rate in law, especially in law enforcement. I could bring up now the numbers just for this year. I think we're at close to a little over 200 now in terms of police suicide. Just one organization, LA County, I was reading, LA County Sheriff's Department, they've had 13 suicides this year. That's
right.
that
they just had a handful back to back to back in 1 week.
So that makes you question, like, what's going on with the leadership there? Like, what's the culture there? And it makes you question a lot of things. And to me, part of it says no surprise, because unfortunately the mental health stigma within law enforcement is so bad that no one's willing to really speak out, to say, hey, I'm having an issue, I need help. But that translates.
That right there is what I would love to break. And I know you're working on doing that too, because it's just, and there's this fine line that you have to ride. And it's, for me in the military, it's much easier with guys who serve in SOF, right?
Yeah.
Because to tell everybody the truth, you have guys who go to selection.
Yeah.
They go to a Q course, they go to a team, and then they let themselves go.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people feel like they made it. And at the end of the day, it comes down to discipline. Like,
Yeah.
how do you build discipline in your culture? And there's a fine line between, like what you talked about, going to a traumatic event or somebody getting injured, where there's this fine line of like you have to know your people,
Yeah.
but then finding that right person, say, hey man, saddle back up, get back on the horse, right? I need
Yeah.
you to go to this next one.
Yeah.
However, we have to build a process in to get you to work through this trauma. Cause I don't want you to just saddle up every time and throw it in the bag.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many people I know that are in both worlds are very type A. They're go-getters. And they're like, well, it'll be all right. Well, it's okay. If you go to 2 bad calls and you come up, right? Or in the military, you have 2 bad things happen. Hey man, I need to pause. Like I need just a quick, all right, man, let's take care of you.
Yeah.
But it's that fine line of like some of those guys that will take that, hey, I need you to saddle back up too hard, which you hope it doesn't turn in. And one thing Brad said last night, man, which when he showed up to the department, because he was a highway patrol guy for 25 years, his like in brief was, hey, when the job gets hard, just drink. If that's not good enough, go find another girlfriend. And it's like, okay, well, that's not the right answer.
No.
But again, like, is that stemming from, hey man, just get back up on the horse? But then you're talking, right, complete culture change. Because then you're talking, how are you going to pay people to stay 30 minutes later after work to talk about debrief?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, that culture now comes into it where there are some that will not do a single thing if money's not involved or something. It's too bad. I mean, we there's been officers over the years I've seen that really did need help, and I've had even officers under my command in like as a sergeant, where I could tell they had like a rough night, like lack of sleep, all that shit. And I literally pull them aside in the office, say, hey, and I put them in a quiet sector purposely, because to me, they're like, they're not they're not of good use to anybody, because they're wherever their mindset's at, whatever's personal going on in their home. And I've even told people like, hey, there's more strength when you ask for help than not say anything. I said, I'll be the first to tell you. And I'm pretty open with my, my issues and whatever else that comes up. And I'm like, hey, dude, like when I got to tap out, I tap out. Like it is what it is. There's no shame in it, and tapping out as in, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to decompress, and not through the bottle at all. It's something I had to learn, because back when I came up on the job, that's the way it was. It was after shift. I worked the 4 to midnight shift, in Boston. There's a local bar that everybody goes to, after work. And we drink our night away, and that's something that, again, in the culture, that's the way it was. But like you said, that's not the way it should be. That's definitely not the right answer at all. And so that's, again, like you said, lessons learned. Yeah, you know what? This is what I learned, and this is what I want to bring forward to you. This is what I've learned over the years. And, and that's why I always tell people, like, no, one size doesn't fit all. This might work for me, might not work for you. But what works for you might not work for me. And that's the thing, like, to me, why physical fitness is such a huge part of my culture, like of what I do, is because I'm able to literally kick the shit out of my demons, so to speak, during a workout, where I come back the other end. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm ready to go for the day, and that's the thing, like why with Project Sapient, like fitness is such a big part of it. Fitness and mental resiliency is such a big part of it, is, when I do these classes, and it's exactly as you were talking about the class that you have coming up, where I put them into scenarios where I induce stress purposely, and very simple methods that I've learned over the years through military, SWAT, whatever. And, things that I'll have them do is like, I'll show them a picture. Hey, look at this picture. Remember as much as you can about it. I take it away, induce the stress, do whatever they got to do. They run the scenario. They come back to me. And I'm like, what do you remember off that picture? I don't show it to them. I said, what do you remember off that picture? Or do you remember the red car? Or do you do this? And then it goes for them. It like, oh shit, I don't remember any of that. I'm like, well, there you go. That's your cognitive overload. That's your mind telling you that you are so spent, you can't even remember simple little details. And so that's what they start to learn.
Yeah, 100%. And I tell people all the time, you'll never, and you know this, right? You'll never rise to the occasion. You always fall to your lowest level of training. And I hope that there's never another day where there's a school shooting.
Yeah.
But after every single one of those, right, the Monday morning quarterbacks come in. Why didn't the police officer run in? Hey, that mom or dad that was sitting in line, why didn't they run in? Well, sorry to tell you, but 9 times out of 10, it's because when everybody's home, comfortable, they're not putting in the work to build that mental resiliency. They're not going to a course that's going to induce a little bit of stress, right? Like those things happen and you're just not prepared. You're never going to rise. You're never going to be like, oh man, I hear gunshots going off. Somebody else needs to go in there. And it's like, okay, well, we should probably look at how we train. We should probably look at how we spend our personal time. And man, I'm 100% with you on the physical fitness train. I'm at a point now that if I don't work out, typically it's twice a day, but if I don't work out at all, I'm a very pissed off,
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. If I go on vacation and I'll take that week, I won't even work out, or my wife will be like, why are you going to the hotel gym? Let's go. Like, we got things to do. I'm miserable. By the end of the week, I come home, I'm like, I am so fat. I'm out of shape. I'm this, I'm that, so it's like, it just plays into the mind. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's so important that we train again, like you said, and that's the thing, like during the training, the active shooter training I was doing, I bring back the human element of it all. And I said, listen, we've been doing these reps over and over and over again. Now I'm going to tell you, there's a 9-year-old child in that room that's bleeding out, yet there's still shooting going on. What are you doing? And they would be like, well, we go towards the shooter. I said, but the reality of it, are you going to really walk over a 9-year-old begging for help and going to take care of that shooter? I said, and that's the thing. It's like, I want you to ask yourself that question over and over and over again, because in the end, we're human. Like if I see a 9, I don't know what I'll do. Honestly, that's the honest. I give them the honest answer. I'm like, honestly, I don't know what I'll do. I don't know if I'm going to carry this kid and then go deal with the threat, or I'm going to sit and be like, 9 years old. Fuck this. Like, I don't know. Unless, and you know as well as I do, you don't know how you're going to react to combat once you're there. Like,
you know what? I went to NTC once, and this OC that was there, this people that don't observer controller, when you go to these big training events, you have somebody that basically walks over and gives you comments. Anyway, he made this comment. He walked up and he said, Americans are inherently weak. And I was like, the hell is this guy talking about?
Yeah.
And they did a scenario where back in the day, right, sniper fire was really big. And guess what happened when old boy went down?
Yeah.
Everybody would run back out there.
Yeah.
Run back out there. Run back out there. And you're like, what? You know what I mean? You're like, what am I doing right now? And it's because you inherently want to help.
Yeah.
And that's a great point about seeing a child that's bleeding out is you have to train that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, how long does it take to put a tourniquet on? Right? Yeah. Not very long.
No.
But again, man, if you don't train it, like you are good to nobody if that kid ends up dying because they got a femoral artery that's bleeding out, and you think, well, I'm going to go be the hero of the day, and the kid dies, then you die, and like,
that's the thing. That's why I always pose these really tough questions, is to make people think, to make them think about. Like I tell them, I'm like, think hard. I was like, there's no right or wrong answer in this, but you have to be realistic with your answer. Like, are you going to really step over a 9-year-old who's yelling and crying for help, and you have shooting going on with more kids yelling? Like, I purposely give them these really tough moral questions because they're going to face them one day, and that's why I tell them, like, after the training, I'm like, listen, I don't expect you guys to remember every freaking thing that you guys just learned, because I'm giving you guys so much information in this short amount of time that if you guys are able to remember at least one or two things, then I was successful in the training. And that's it. Because under stress, you are really going to remember one or two things. You're not going to, all the training, especially like you said, if you're not constantly drilling, like on SWAT, I'm like, very fortunate that we train every Wednesday and we're like high speed. We do this thing. We're there, we're training, we're doing all our thing. General patrol, they don't get that at all. Like that level of training, which to me, I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about that, where patrol officers should be training to the level of SWAT regardless. a position. I don't care what they do, whether they're traffic division, whatever, but that's the level they need to train at all times in order for them to get those reps in. Right. I'm not just saying that, they go to SWAT call outs now or any of that shit. No, Kyle Lamb put it perfectly. I talked to him years ago when I first met him, and he gave it, a great kind of analogy or scenario. He told me, he said, buddy of his sent him 2 recruiting videos from this large PD out west. And the 2 recruiting videos is one video shows a cop who is painting, cat ears on kids, doing community service type thing. Very, nice kind of portrayal of a cop. And then there's the other video is a cop getting ready for work, loading their gun, putting their gun in their hip, going out there, doing traffic stops, dealing with domestics, whatever. And obviously this agency used the other one, the more gentler type cop. And Kyle was like, why can't a cop be both? Why can't you have a recruiting video that shows a cop being human, right? Painting, giving water balloon fights, whatever. But then it shifts, drop of the hat, active shooter, it turns on, and he or she goes and deals with it. Said, why can't you be both? And I agreed with him. I said, that's the way it should be. You should be able to do both, as a cop, where you turn it on just like that. I mean, we've done it in the military so many times where, we might be on our fob, we might be doing this, we might be, smoking and joking, doing whatever. All of a sudden shit hits the fan, we turn it on and we're on it. And that's the thing. It should be that way, in the profession. So it is, kind of shifting gears now with Beyond the Trek. Is this also something that you're seeing in terms of the newer generation where they're more, whether it's the military or, whoever else you train, are they, more into that whole, the warrior lifestyle or the kind of gentler lifestyle?
The interactions I've been able to have, everybody, because of social media now, everybody wants to be like the tier 1 operator, but nobody wants to put in the work.
Yeah.
So going back to what you said, how everybody should be trained like a SWAT person. I mean, I've walked into aviation units and had talks. I've walked into field artillery places, right? And everybody's like, so let's hear the war story. All right. Well, first, maybe training like a SWAT guy for an officer. This is where you have that balance of right, the culture, the empathy. But then part of me comes down to what are you complaining about?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. It doesn't cost you anything to do 10 minutes worth of just dry fire drills.
Yeah.
Just pulling out your holster. Everybody wants to be the tier 1 guy, 100 meters out, size of a thumbnail. Hey man, that's great. Except for the fact, what you tend to forget is, and this is where I'm going with, when I talk to people, is what you tend to forget is it all goes back to the basics.
Yeah.
100%. When I talk about mindset, when I talk about values, when I talk about anything, preparing yourself before, during, after trauma, physically, mentally, emotionally, it comes back to what is your baseline?
Yeah.
What is your baseline? If you don't have a baseline, then you're going to look like a soup sandwich on a rainy day trying to figure it out because you were too worried about watching a video and being like, well, yeah, I know, Kyle Lamb's able to shoot, really quick and, put him in a small target. Yeah. He also had millions of dollars worth of training and has a lot of assets that you don't. But I'll tell you right now, he does a lot of transition drills and practice.
Yeah.
And, and that's not the sexy, and I hate to say it, man, but that's not the sexy stuff people want to hear.
No, it's not. So it's funny. He says, so I showed a video to my guys maybe a few months back. I don't know if you remember, maybe this happened maybe a couple years ago. Washington State, this cop ended up, shooting some dude at 183 yards. One shot took him down. He was the Starbucks cop. I don't know if you remember that. He had a Starbucks in his hand, puts it up. Yeah, basically a Starbucks cop.
Yeah.
And I showed them that video and I said, was that luck or skill? They're like, well, obviously skill. I'm like, yeah. How many reps do you think he did to get to that level? And there was not really an answer, but I'll tell you right now, thousands of reps. That wasn't just done overnight. I spoke to a couple of Phoenix cops. Actually, I talked to them oh, this is years ago when I was first had the podcast and everything. I talked to them. They had this hostage rescue type scenario, active shooter / hostage rescue right in downtown Phoenix. This dude's starting to light up cars left and right. He was holding his 2-year-old baby, like little kid, in his hand while he's shooting at everything that moves. And these 2 cops show up. The first 2 cops that showed up, brand new to the job, maybe a year and a half total between the 2 of them. And they end up stopping their cruiser 42 yards away. This dude just shooting at them like crazy. They ducked behind their cruiser because they were overwhelming fire, right? Then the 2 guys I spoke to, more veteran officers on the job, they pull up, and literally it's amazing. If you ever, I'll send you the link to the video. It's just an amazing job that they did from the time. So the passenger was the one with the rifle. You could tell he had like a Leopold scope on it or some kind of scope on it. They stop at like, I think just about 42, 43 yards. Dude gets out of the car. The passenger gets out. From the time he got out to when he shot was 6 seconds. And the only thing he saw in his scope where it gave him the ability to shoot was the guy would use his baby as a shield, right? As a human shield. And at one point, the cop literally said all he saw was this. Like, so the baby's body was here and all he had available for a target was here. And he took the shot and, killed the guy, saved the baby, all that good stuff. So I said, all right. And he said, you want to know something about my partner? I said, yeah, go ahead. He almost failed out of the academy for marksman shooting. Horrible shooting. Nearly failed. He said, but, I took him under my wing. Every Sunday we would go and shoot thousands of rounds, hundreds of rounds over and over and over and over again. And that's what led up to that shot where he had the confidence and the skill to make that shot. So it goes back like what we were saying is, yeah, no one wants to work hard to be this tier 1 dude, or no one wants to work hard to be the next Kyle Lamb or whatever it is. They think it just happens overnight. But what they don't see is the hundreds of hours of training that went in it, which, again, it goes back to the class I did. Like I told them, I said, listen, I could, room clearing, you could do that in your own house. I made a joke. I'm like, listen, I don't care if you're in your underwear, wear a Viking hat, and you got like your kid's Nerf gun, and you can walk through and, do room clearing. I'm like, do that on, that's easy. Take 5 minutes a day, pick a room in your house and go clear it. Work on the different angles. And that's how you build that repetition. That's how you build that neuroplasticity in you in order to do it. And I tell people, like, I have a lot of friends who are Green Berets, and I ask them, how was CQB school for you? They're like, oh, it sucked, because it was the amount of repetitions, which I get it, like on SWAT. Sometimes we'll do 3-man room entries for the day, and it's so fucking boring. But there's a reason why we have to do it. We get it. We got to build that neuroplasticity. We got to build that muscle memory. That way, when shit hits the fan, we're not, again, like you said, you fall back to your training. So when we fall back to that training, we know what the training is, and we just go do it. So I mean, yeah.
And that baseline, man. I mean, how many videos do you see? My cousin got out of the Army as a police officer, now back in California. And sometimes like I'll look, like what, where they're doing, where they're operating at. And a lot of the young guys, how many guys do you see that they would show up to a call like that and they pull out their pistol?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Bro, you are not going to make that shot like at all. So baseline, just even practicing, like identifying the target, what is in front of the target, on the target, beyond the target. It's probably a rifle shot. So like, I need to train the ability to look at that.
Yeah.
Just simplistic things. And man, you brought a really good point about doing CQB in your house is people, I'm sure, will argue with you like they do with me and be like, well, I don't have that time. Okay. Well, let me tell you this. CQB is really easy to do. I got 2 kids that love laser tag. So I bought a $75 laser tag that was just rifles.
Yeah.
So I play in the house and I'm just like pieing corners and stuff. Like,
yeah.
And you can't, and the crazy thing is in case anybody doesn't know, there's only 24 hours in a day. Elon Musk, the president, you, me, everybody's got 24 hours. Like it ain't a surprise.
Yeah.
So you might work long hours, you might do this, but you can't tell me you can't carve out 10, 30 minutes, an hour to work on fitness, to work on little things that you need to do. And that's kind of where the harshness comes in, right? And the discipline of like, hey man, suck it up.
Yeah.
Like it may come down to this moment right here. And it goes back to exactly what we've been talking about, the lessons learned.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what I had to do. We're not going to talk about the thousands of reps. Maybe you don't have the time. Maybe you're a single dad, single mom. That's fine. But you know what you can do is get up 15 minutes before your alarm is supposed to go off, and you can knock out 100 burpees.
Yeah.
You can grab your stuff and just walk to the house before you got to pick up your kids. Like,
yeah.
Your coffee can be brewing, and you can do some dry fire, put a piece of paper up on the wall. Like, there's endless opportunities for you to be able to do this thing.
Yeah.
So, and I love saying that and go, hey, what are your questions? There should be none.
Yeah.
And I'll wait. Right.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like,
I mean, that's true. I mean, even like, cops, like, we go to these building alarm calls all the time. 99.9% of the time, it's a false alarm, no big deal, nothing. And I tell them, I was like, can't you practice CQB when you're walking through a warehouse? Like, think of the angles. Like, we're walking through anyways. We got to check the building. Why not go a couple reps? Which I would do that if I show up, with my guys and we make sure it's secure, it's safe, nothing's going on. I'm like, all right, hey, attack this room. How would you do it? Just quick. I'm not asking them to draw the guns, nothing. Just use your feet. Walk me through.
Oh, come on, man. Like, how we would do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, be humble enough to eat the sandwich. It's all right. You know?
Well, that's the thing. I always do training. Like, I want to know everybody's baseline whenever I do training, and I will throw them cold into a situation because I don't know, like, I don't know them really. And, I don't know what they know. So I'll throw them like, this active shooter type training. I said, hey, first scenario, you're going to be active shooter, whatever, just go. I'm not going to correct you. I'm not going to say anything. I just want to see how you guys move as a team. And then after that, then we'll get into the lessons and stuff like that. And, some are better than others, and it is what it is. And it's never me ripping into them. It's just me tweaking or correcting or fixing a couple little things here and there, and that's it. And then all of a sudden you have a nice polished CQB run where a couple little, cues that I give them, they're like, oh, shit, okay, now I get it. And then they go do it.
Crazy. And you did it at work on work time.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, you're getting paid to do this shit. You're getting paid to do it while you're at work. And, there's always, like I said, there's always a lull in the violence. There's always a lull in anything that we do. I know, like, your shifts, for the police officer out there, your shifts. Where you're going to have a half hour to an hour of just dead silence. You're going to have that. And I know exactly, like, for us, like, I work during the day shift between 8 and 11. It's not that bad. Depending on the days of the week or whatever, it's not that bad. Sunday morning, not bad at all. Everyone's still sleeping. You know what? I could carve out a couple hours and we could go train, do something, But again, like, going back to the conversation about culture, how's the culture of that department? How's that culture of that agency? Is the leadership on board for that, with that kind of stuff, or are they not? And I'm sure, when you're talking to police departments, like you said, you've been trying to get connected and talk to police departments, which I get, money's always tight with these departments, but also, is it really tight, or is the leadership not even on board? Right. Those are questions I sometimes ask. Where they can.
I can't even get a call back.
But again, though, that's the thing. What's the culture? And unfortunately, in law enforcement, a lot of these emergency services are so enclosed to newer ideas that it hurts them in the long run. Right. That's where you get your issues, that, the systematic issues within departments, is because they refuse to acknowledge the problems within the departments. So that whether it's obesity or lack of fitness or whatever it might be, they refuse to acknowledge it. And that's the thing, like, with Project Sapient and even, with you, like, Beyond the Trek, is like, no, we want to make sure that shit's out front and talked about. Because if it's not talked about, there's never going to be any change in that culture of that agency or that unit or whatever it might be. The conversations need to be had.
Doing it. I mean, as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm thinking of everybody telling me why they can't do it, right? How they don't have time because it'll cost money. And I'm like, how about 5 minutes at a shift change? Make everybody wait 5 extra minutes. Like, I promise you, everyone will be all right. Like, just talk about it. Hey, guys, this is important because X, Y, and Z. And just keep reiterating it.
Yep.
But on top of that, you better live it as well.
Yeah.
Like, you better live it. And that's the one thing I always tell these guys when we get to go out and do an event. And I love doing PT events, is I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I won't do myself, because it goes back to that senior NCO.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's the NCO mentality right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't give a shit what you've done. I don't care. It's done. It's gone.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm going to ask you to carry a certain thing and be in the suck, I'm going to do it with you.
Yeah.
Even right now. And it's because if I got to move to that breach point or I got to move to the door, I want to be able to provide that standard. So you go and you're like, God dang it, man. Well, you know what? At least he's doing it. Let's ride whatever way this goes, and people will do that. They'll be like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the thing. Like as a leader and as a teacher as well, it's that NCO mentality, man. Right back there, if you can tell, I have the NCO creed. That's part of my wall back there, right? But that's the thing. It's that whole the very first sentence. No one's more professional than I. There's a reason why we have that as the very first sentence, right? Because we are that professional, right? We are that standard that everyone wants to look up to or do, or however you want to call it, because we're the ones that eventually will mold the future leaders of any organization. So when I say, I remember when I first became an NCO, and we were sweeping the deck, at the armory at the time. And
in the rain.
Yeah, in the rain, exactly. And I'm sweeping. I'm with the troops. I'm just out there, and I'll never forget. An NCO came up to me and he's like, "Hey, Sarge, you don't have to do that anymore." I said, "Why not? Like, they're doing it. I'm going to do it with them." Like, so it's like, to me, I've always grown up with the idea that if I did it, then you're going to do it. If I never did it, I'm not going to force you to do something I've never done or experienced myself. So that's the thing. And it's funny. I say that at work, and I tell the guys, and just so you know, there's a lot that I've done. So you're going to have to do, there's not going to be, you're not going to get much. If you come back to me and say, I don't know if I can do this, guess what? I've done it. You're doing it. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be that hypocrite that's never done it and still make you do it. No, fucker. I've done it, and you're going to do it too. It's going to suck, but guess what? We're doing it together.
So the Army's definition of leadership is to provide purpose, direction, and motivation, right? To better improve the organization and everything else. So I've taken part of that. And I've told people when you want to do, what are you doing with your lessons learned beyond, right? What are you doing with, how are you going to lead from the front? As a leader, in my opinion, you need to give purpose, direction, and inspiration. I don't care if you're sweeping. I don't care if you're putting gas in the patrol car. I don't care. Whatever it is, you're going to set it, and you're going to inspire other people to do the same. Because even if they don't like you, even if, right, I get told all the time, like, dude, sometimes it is extremely annoying, how just boisterous and everything you are. But what's crazy is anytime we go to do anything difficult, training, I've been told more times than not, guys are like, all right, man, I'm right there with you because you're doing it. I have nothing else to say except it's just really annoying. And it's because it's inspiring to people. And, you don't have to be the person that's like, well, I don't fit in with this crowd. Just be you. Hold your standard. What is your standard? Know your standard, hold your standard, and don't let up. And you'd be surprised at how many people are going to be attracted to that. You're going to be surprised at how many people move away from that, or how many people you find that are just like you. Life is so short, man. And for a long time, I struggled, and I still do today. I mean, I had it today. You do so many things, your head's down, you're moving, that you forget to look up. You forget to realize that life is happening. And I did it today. I looked up and I was like, man, today's a beautiful day. Wow. The life expectancy is not 100. The life expectancy is 72, 73. And one of the things I told people is take a piece of paper, write from 1 to 100. Right. And they write it down, and I go, cool. Tear off the age that you're at right now. Right. So boom, they tear it off. And I go, awesome. Life expectancy for a male is 72. It's 76 for a female. Rip it off. That's all you got left. That's it. Put that in perspective. That's all you got left. And it goes hand in hand with what I heard something the other day. And it goes back to what you're saying about learning, is you get to watch your kids be kids for a very short time, and you get to watch the rest of your life, watch them be adults. And I sat down, and our oldest is 11. And I was like, damn, man, I get about 7 summers left, and it's over. And you put it in perspective like that, you're like, So what am I going to do? How am I going to provide my kids purpose, direction, and inspiration to be those people that I want them to be and be good members of society and set the standard and let them know like, hey guys, like these are standards. I want you to hold these. When you go to meet somebody else, your significant other, your friends, especially my son, hey, when your friend wants to go do some dumb shit, like what is your standard? Like
Yeah.
you're not going to let up.
Yeah.
You're going to be a kid and I want you to do that.
Yeah.
I want you to be an adult. But we got to take the time to remember that we don't need to fall into the trap of, don't worry, hey, when I get promoted, hey, when I get done with this job, like life's going, man. Tomorrow's or yesterday's gone, tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do to make an impact today and ensure that, we make change for tomorrow? And I fall victim of that too.
Yeah.
I fall short of being a husband. I fall short of being a father.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And I've gotten to a point to where, my wife very, very, very much reminds me, man, I got back from overseas on her birthday at midnight, and her birthday and Mother's Day are either the same day or one day apart.
Yeah.
And I've been gone a lot. And she goes, so you didn't send me anything or do anything. And right, the first thing is to get upset about it on my end.
Yeah.
But I had to remember like, hey man, what is my standard? My standard is like, I want to be a loving and caring husband for her. And like, I just need to shut my mouth and I just need to go plan a day.
Yeah.
And it's going to be everything that I probably don't want to do. But hey, that's all right.
Yeah, exactly. That's, it's funny you say that because I tend to get the same modes at times where, especially, man, she hated it when I worked, when I was an undercover. She absolutely hated it because I had to have a whole different type of persona. And especially when I come home talking to, some legit bad dudes on my phone. And I'm sitting there, throwing every other F-bomb and just not really being myself, obviously. And she would look at me. She'll point to the door, like, get out. Literally, don't bring it into the house type of thing. And that's the thing, like, we all, and that's the thing I always admit. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I messed up on that. Like, let me, again, it's going to be something that I'm probably going to hate to do, but you know what? It is what it is. And I'll put in the effort, to be that, loving husband and that loving father and stuff like that, especially with my son. And he, he's 13 now and he's got that 13-year-old attitude, which is hilarious. It cracks me up, honestly, because it's like, man, you little shit. Like,
Dude, right before we got on the call, I was outside and I was trying to get a quick workout in.
Yeah.
And my son walks in. My wife took him to go see a movie. My son walks in and I had 65 pounds on the barbell.
Yeah.
Right? I was literally just warming up.
Yep.
And he walks up and his back's all arched and he grabs the bar and he goes, Dad, really? It's a weak weight. And he goes to pick it up and I show him like proper form and he like can't pick it up. And I'm like, so many things to still learn there.
Yeah. Yeah, I call my son young Padawan. I'm like, yo, little Padawan, you still got much to learn. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Oh, man. But hey, Chad, before kind of, we're getting towards that time, towards the end of the episode. And usually I like to end it on, whether it's something you want to tell people, whether it's about Beyond the Trek or even talking about, like you said, the purpose-driven type mindset, anything you want to give to the audience about that, giving the floor to you for that.
So what I would say is we're just normal people, man. We're all normal people that have all had our own walks in life, and our organization just wants to give that back. The team that we've built, they just want to give that back. To give a quick little background on it, right? So you guys, you've heard who I am. We've got a guy on the team that had a drinking and driving accident that was severely tragic, that he died on the scene. He was brought back. Like we all have these stories to share. And that's all we want to do is make you better. I'm not going to sit here and sell you a product or sell you anything that, everybody has the potential to have leadership. There's awesome organizations like Project Sapient. I mean, you got No One Fights Alone. I mean, there's endless resources. If you're struggling out there or you're an organization that says, hey, I want to get better, I don't know how to do it, like, it's okay. The change starts with you. You can break the stigma. All you got to do is raise your hand, send an email, send an Instagram message. You would be surprised at the amount of people that answer messages and that want to help you. That's all we want to do, because there's nothing more than I want than to see somebody continue to be a father, continue to be a mother, I don't, the answer is not to the answer is not to end your life. It's not, there's nothing that bad. I promise you, there's nothing that bad. Like, if it's just tools and techniques you need to learn, like, it's okay. You can take a pivot in life. And we just want to try and be that resource for you. And anything that we can do, just to make better people, man. That's all it is.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Chad. Thanks for coming on. If you want to wait a minute, we'll talk offline for a couple seconds. But thank you so much for coming on and talking about Beyond the Trek and just overall, life philosophies and the things that you guys are doing, that some awesome things out there. And I will put in the show notes your Instagram, your website, all that good stuff on there. That way people can find you. And as for, my fellow Project Sapient listeners, hope you got, something out of this. At least, like I always say, 1-2 things that you can take home with you tonight, or even on the road, or even during roll call, talk about it. I'm always open for any sort of discussion. Feel free, email me. Send me a DM on Instagram, LinkedIn. Also, I'm on there. By all means, send me messages. I love hearing from everybody and see how everyone's doing. And as always, stay safe out there. Stay safe.